thank you for joining me on our latest edition of Another Damn Day. I'm Stephen Midgley, Chief Marketing Officer at MediaValet. So when people think about a CMO's day, or really anyone leading a marketing organization, they picture campaigns, creative reviews, budget reviews, and of course, those dreaded board meetings. And yes, those things do happen, but the reality is the job is all about decisions, constant decisions, hundreds of decisions every day. Where do we invest? Where do we pull back? What's actually working? And how do we scale it before the opportunity passes? What's underperforming and how do we stop wasting budget on it before it drains resources? And we know in marketing, one of the challenges that we have is really budget management. When there's a cutback, it's marketing budget that gets cut back first. And I always say I wanted to be an accountant, so I got into marketing because I spend so much time looking at budgets and spreadsheets and doing forecasting on where to spend. Because every dollar we spend is a bet. The question is whether we're betting informed or betting blind. And the quality of those decisions almost always comes down to one thing, whether your content is working for you or working against you. When content is disorganized, hard to find, duplicated across teams, or constantly being recreated from scratch, every decision becomes more difficult. Campaigns take longer, teams move slower, budget efficiency drops. But when content is accessible, measurable, and connected to outcomes, everything changes. Teams move faster, campaigns scale more effectively, and marketing becomes far more accountable and far more strategic. And that's what we're going to discuss today, a real day in the life of a marketing leader, how I think about running a team, protecting my budget, driving efficiencies, and how a dam becomes the operational foundation underneath all of it. Really, the dam is the foundation to your MarTech stack. Because the reality is, in most marketing problems today, the problems aren't creative. They're not creative problems, they're operational problems. And that's where the bottlenecks happen, is on the operational side. Marketing leaders are being asked to do more with less. We all know that. We're being asked to produce more content for more channels than ever before. And every channel seems to have its own format. So it's not one size fits all. And for many organizations, content has quietly become one of the largest hidden operational costs in the business. And with the rise of LLMs and AI, content becomes even more critical because now you're not just optimizing for organic search or search engine optimization. You're optimizing for generative engine optimization or GEO, and you're optimizing for answer engine optimization, AEO. So your organic battlefield, if you will, has moved from one front to three fronts. So content is absolutely critical to building your brand, building a demand gen pipe, and growing the marketing organization. So we'll get into it. What we're going to focus on is we're going to really focus on three areas, which I think are really core essence of a CMO mandate and really the essence of a marketing organization. So one, brand consistency, governance, and enablement at scale. How do we ensure our brand is consistent as the business grows, as we expand? How do you turn your MarTech stack into a real marketing engine as opposed to a disconnected set of point solutions that solve a specific endpoint but don't solve the broader problem and actually slow things down and become that operational bottleneck? And then we'll talk about what I think is really the most important thing as a CMO is about visibility and control of what's actually happening. As a CMO, what I want to have is, and what I need is visibility and control. Visibility, do I know what assets are being used, where and by whom? And control, ensuring that the right assets are being used by the right people. So I've been in marketing long enough to know what brand chaos actually looks like from the inside. The shared drives with 5 versions of the same logo, the agency that goes off-brand, or in their words, creative, because no one sent them the updated guidelines. The regional team that builds their own campaign because finding approved assets took longer than just making something new. And of course, that sales rep, bless their heart, who's out there with a deck you've never seen before And yes, we all have the stories and we all have those battle scars to prove it of that rogue employee who went and created their own deck and it's completely off brand. But you don't lose control of your brand all at once. You lose it asset by asset, team by team, until the thing that you built, spent money on, nurtured, have grown, doesn't quite look like itself anymore. And brand is really like that Jenga puzzle. You know, you remove one piece and your brand, it'll remain intact, maybe a bit wobbly, but it remains intact. But several pieces are removed and it all falls apart. And for those who played that game, rebuilding it is certainly not the fun part of that game. And so think about your brand like a Jenga puzzle. You've got to maintain that integrity for it to scale effectively. So what does marketing need? And more broadly, what does your organization need? Because a digital asset management solution is not a marketing solution. It is an enterprise-wide solution. A DAM that is effectively used is a DAM that is used by the entire organization, not just marketing. You need one place where partners, contractors, regional teams, sales, product can find what they need, use what's approved, and move fast without going off script. Know what's in market, know what's in market, and know it's on brand. And then you have the confidence that teams are using the correct materials in communicating your company to the broader market. And that's really what a brand portal actually does. It's not just about organization of content, but it's really about control that scales across agencies, geographies, and the people who all just need the right asset right now. So let's take a look at how we use our own technology at MediaValet. So I'm going to share with you our brand portal. It's a great tool from a marketing perspective because really this is what governance without friction looks like. The brand team controls what's approved. Everyone else just finds what they need and uses it correctly every time. And the easier something is to use, the greater the adoption. And really, adoption is how you increase time to value and how you measure ROI. So for CMOs who are serious about brand governance, it would be hard to find a CMO that isn't serious about brand governance. This isn't just a nice to have, this is a need to have technology. So how we use it is basically what you're looking at is you're looking here at our brand sense and addresses a problem every marketing leader deals with. How do you keep your brand consistent when your team is spread out? You're working with agencies and content is being created across dozens of different channels every single day. So this page is essentially the front door to everything that makes our brand our brand. So we'll scroll through it. You see our mission. We talk about how we amplify the brand. So we talk about our logos, our typography, our colors, the graphical elements, icons, voice, and tone. Things that us as marketers take very seriously because we know it's all about brand integrity that many of our stakeholders don't appreciate the importance of. For example, fonts or logos. They couldn't tell you the difference between Railway, Aptos, or Comic Sans. And so what we want to make sure is that we maintain that integrity across. So we use this as our backbone. It's constantly being updated. Our teams know that this is a place to go to get the latest logos, to get the color palette, to get the icons, to get the typography. So for example, we look at logos, and logos are often the one that gets misrepresented. They go to Google, they do a search for Company X PDF or Company X PNG file. And if you've been through a recent rebrand, maybe your logo's changed. And so the internet's full of your old logos. And people don't pay attention to that stuff. And so this way, we make sure that everyone's using the most up-to-date logo. We look at typography. Another thing that as marketers we take very seriously. At MediaValet, we use Railway. And I can't tell you how many times in previous companies I've seen presentations use the wrong typography. They may not know it, but we know it, and it's just another block taken out of that Jenga puzzle. So it's a small detail, but as a CMO, I know it contributes to how whether a brand feels cohesive or scattered. And a true story, I have seen a presentation done by a sales rep in a previous company where he used Comic Sans as the font in his presentation. Actually quite horrific to look at, but we avoid that at MediaValet because we use our brand center. And then photography. You know, as marketers, that you have a stylistic design, that you want consistency of photography, whether those are hero shots, whether those are product shots. And so everything is here that you can access, and you can go and download those photos. And so you know that what you're using is approved by marketing. What we know is being used is approved by us. And then one thing I'm going to show you in the brand center, which is really important to me, is around brand templates. And brand templates are something I feel strongly about, because the biggest threat to brand consistency isn't bad intentions. It's people not having the right tools. It's people, they may think they're doing the right thing, but the end result is not a great outcome. So when someone on my team or the broader MediaValet team needs to spin up a social post, they want to build a flyer for an event, they want to put together a welcome packet, what they reach for in that moment matters enormously. If the answer is, I'm just going to start from scratch, or just find something that looks close enough, that's where brand drift or brand degradation starts. And this is why having an improved template library is non-negotiable. What you're seeing here covers the full range of what my team needs day to day, from employee brand kits, business card templates, LinkedIn banners. And so I know everyone's using the correct assets, the correct tools. And how we do it, so we have our social media templates, employee spotlights, social ads, and this is integrated with Mark, which is one of our partners. Mark is what we use for templating. And so there's a tight integration between our brand center and our templating solution. So sales rep needs to create a poster for an ad or something for a customer. They can come to the brand center. It's a one-stop shop. They know it's completely up to date. They know where to get it. It gets fully utilized. And so that means that we have that control and that visibility of how our assets are being produced. So one thing I want to talk about next is just really how, from a content perspective, how we're engineering for consistency and built for scale. So Ultradent, one of our customers, by using experience portals, they've reduced asset time by 50%. And Music Tribe supports their global brands, and it truly is a global organization with 70% faster access to assets and 40% faster campaign creation. If you make it easy for your internal stakeholders, they will use the tool. If you make it difficult or challenging, they will not use the tool, and that's a classic fast track scenario to brand degradation, especially for those listening in who have regional teams or have geographically dispersed teams. It's much easier for brand degradation to happen. So really what you have with the experience portal and more broadly the digital asset management platform is one source of content truth for all of your internal teams, your agencies, your partners, your regional offices. Everyone's working from the same approved assets, the same current guidelines every time. That's brand consistency at scale without your brand team becoming the bottleneck. And that's an important point. Often marketing teams are often the last stop before an asset goes to market, before an asset is consumed by the end user. And because of that, we can become that bottleneck. And if we can become a bottleneck, that means we become operationally inefficient, which means your internal stakeholders will go elsewhere. They'll just, oh, it's just faster for me to build it myself than to go through marketing. They make it so difficult to get things done. So what we're really doing is we're decentralizing responsibility. We're giving power into the hands of the user, but we still maintain control and visibility. And that's a great combination where we empower the internal stakeholder through the use of experience portals, through the use of effective digital asset management, but we maintain control and visibility. And that's really the ideal scenario as a CMO. And that governance is built in, it's not bolted on. Expired assets come down automatically, rights are tracked. Only what's approved is accessible. You don't have to hope people are using the right thing. The system makes the right thing the only option for them. And for your sales and partner teams, the ones who need something fast and will make it themselves if you don't give it to them, they get what they need when they need it in a format they can actually use. No rogue decks, no off-brand proposals going out the door. That's the business case for effective content management. Less brand risk, less wasted effort, more confidence in what's representing you in market. But all that only works if your digital asset management platform is actually connected to the rest of your stack. So let's talk about MarTech. So in my time in marketing, which is quite a bit of time, the biggest change is the volume of point solutions available to us in marketing. And it's great. You find a point solution that addresses a specific end use case, but that can cause other problems. And I've been in that room where we've mapped out our MarTech stack on a whiteboard. It looks great. 15 plus, 20 plus tools, all the right logos, every category covered. And then I watched my team spend half the week moving files between them. And that's the part that no one talks about when they sell you the point solution, is that it may solve the specific use case, but it doesn't connect. And so you create silos of disinformation, silos of content, and these knowledge shadows really plague marketing and create that bottleneck that we were talking about. So owning a set of disconnected tools isn't the same as having a marketing engine. You've got fragmented MarTech. Assets get re-uploaded, they get reformatted, they get recreated from scratch because two systems or multiple systems don't talk to each other. You think about your workflow management tool and your digital asset management tool and your CRM and your marketing automation tool. The campaign that slips because someone's manually shuttling files instead of shipping work, that the attribution gap that opens up the moment assets live outside of the dam, no tracking, no visibility, no way to connect content to outcomes. And so whenever you have to download, upload, that is a slippery slope, and you start to lose visibility and things break and people start to do their own thing. And this isn't a small inefficiency. Your team becomes basically a file management operation. The budget that you fought so hard for headcount is now being reapplied to logistics. And it turns out that this isn't just experiences that CMOs think they have. These are real world examples. Integrations rank as a second most challenging topic for marketing teams in AVP's 2026 DAM Trends survey. Is ahead of automation, metadata, governance, adoption. Those are big DAM topics. Organizations have the system, they're just not connected. And that is a big frustration point for marketing organizations because it becomes that bottleneck. The future of content operations isn't about managing assets more efficiently, it's about activating them. By activating content, you drive revenue, moving seamlessly between tools, teams, and channels without anyone manually bridging the gap. And when our MarTech stack is finally connected, the first thing I noticed was what stopped happening. Can you send me the latest version emails and Slack messages that sort of we get drown in. The re-uploads, the campaign that went out with an asset that no one could trace afterwards. The quarterly review where someone asks that question, what content actually drove pipeline, and the room goes quiet. And that's what a connected MarTech stack takes off the table. But what it puts on the table is very different. Assets flow automatically to where teams are working. The CMS, creative tools, social platforms, the CRM. The content goes to where your teams are working. The right file gets to the right place without anyone manually bridging the gap. Version control isn't a policy people have to remember. It's just how the system works. And for the first time, I can actually see where every asset goes and how it's performing. It makes those board meetings much more effective. It makes executive planning meetings and budget planning meetings much more effective. Content ROI stops being a guess. And that matters to me, and it matters to every CEO and CFO I've worked with. As I mentioned earlier, marketing budgets are the first to get cut. And that's just the reality of being marketing. That's just the way it is. But if you know how your dollars are being spent and those bets that you're placing, which ones are actually driving pipeline, driving awareness, then you can really zero in on how to best allocate your marketing spend to get the best return on that marketing dollar. And conversations about integrations usually get stuck on APIs and connectors. That's not really the point. The point is what your team can do when the tools work as one. And that's the difference between a stack and an engine. A MarTech stack is just a series of connected point solutions. An engine is a finely tuned system where content flows seamlessly throughout the content journey, from ideation to being used. So I want to take a quick break. I'm going to make it your turn now. And I'd like to ask a quick question. What does your team lose the most time with when it comes to content? Or what does your team lose the most time when it comes to content? Is it recreating assets that already exist elsewhere, which is dreadfully painful? Is it manually moving files between systems, which where you lose visibility? Is it having third parties like agencies, contractors, partners using the wrong version? Is it slow approvals holding up campaigns? Or is it, I've got no idea. We have zero visibility. We're living in a world of fog of what's being used. So we'll find out what that says. And these are all valid integration problems. And so when it comes to content, we really need to make sure that we've got the right things in place. So we look at the survey, we've got recreating assets. Yeah, that makes sense. Agencies to partners not using the wrong version. Yeah, that might be just because you've got good control over it. But yeah, recreating assets. So think about that in a 40-hour work week, assuming you work 40 hours, but likely you work more like 60. How much time do you spend in a work week recreating an asset? And if we weren't doing that, where could that time be utilized? And so it's about being more efficient and being more effective in how we manage content. So your content budget has a visibility problem. I can tell you exactly where we spend. I can tell you exactly what we spent on content last quarter. It used to be getting what we got for it meant days pulling reports from different tools, stitching them together, and so looking at disparate data sets to pull together a report. But with our DAM, I can tell you exactly where we spent, what we spent on content, and how it's being utilized. The data exists. Beforehand, the data existed, but it was just not connected. And so a connected content ecosystem gives you that true visibility and allows you to report out effectively. So when you can't see that data, you really can't measure content ROI. You're estimating, you're guessing, and it's tough to be guessing. And so, what we're going to take now is we're going to quickly look at we're going to look at our DAM and give you some ideas of how we measure ROI. So the screen you see is really talking about asset engagement. So we have over 5,300 downloads, over 40,000 views, and that isn't vanity. That's behavior. At the top of the list, you can see the sales pitch deck master's got 305 downloads. That's my top revenue driving asset. That's the master sales deck that we use at MediaValet when we're presenting to customers, prospects, and so I don't have to guess what my sales team values. They're telling me every single day with their clicks. And when my creative team asks where to invest next quarter, I have an answer that isn't an opinion. I take the art of making and transforming it into the science of marketing. Now, if we look at row 7, we see this expired. So, and this is just an example, we have 56 downloads. So people are pulling outdated data. So what the DAM tells me, it tells me what's working, but it also tells me what isn't working. And so we have some expired assets that need to be removed from the DAM. If I didn't have this insight, I would just be guessing. But this gives me clear black and white data that I can take action on. We look at the library. What the library shows us, it shows us that we've got over 18,000 assets that are in play. and 1.8 terabytes of data being used. That's not really a storage question. That's the body of a work behind every campaign, every pitch. And look at the governance side. We've got 1,668 assets approved. We've got 300 rejected. So our brand standards aren't just a guideline stock, they're operational. And so you can see I've got 5 assets that are expired. I've got 8 assets with future expiry dates. So I can see what's being used and what needs to be removed from the dam. So the dam becomes that single source of content truth. And I can look at the asset make. I can see that 60% images, files, 23% video, and I can see that video is being used more than other assets. So as I do my planning for next quarter, maybe I need to invest more in video than I did in images. And so it gives me some guidance on how to use budget. So it really isn't an asset library. It's a P&L for the brand itself and what we have, what's in flight and what's at risk. And it really gives me that complete visibility. Ultimately, it takes the subjectivity out of marketing and makes it objective. And finally, this is really cool and interesting, is user groups. And this is really about the adoption story. And adoption is the leading indicator of every other number I care about. Good adoption means that the platform is being used. It means improved time to value. It means effective ROI. And so it gives me a sense of the number of users on the platform, how many are downloading, how many are viewed, users are being uploaded. And I can see here who's using it. Marketing is using it. I can see people leaders are using it. I can see senior leadership or executive team are using it. They're viewing it. They're uploading. So it's an effective tool that they're using. Conversely, I can say, hey, Team X is not using the dam, and I can talk to the department head to ask why they're not using it. Maybe it's an education issue. Maybe it's a learning tool. So it gives you a lot of visibility into how best to use, how best to manage content. So if we look at like permissions and access control, and this is the question that keeps me up at night as a CMO, is how do you keep governance without slowing your team down? And how do external partners, agencies, contractors get exactly what they need without creating risk? So every person in this platform belongs to a user group. And that one assignment governs what they can see, edit, download, and share. And I'll just show you an example real quick of how we do that at MediaValet. So we look at this and we can say, these are the different categories, and you may have different categories. It's really a reflection of how you structure your content and your data. But analyst relations is a great one. So like many companies, like many of you, we work with Gartner, Forrester, Frost, and Sullivan. And we can set permissions. And so we can see we have administrators, approvers, contributors, guests, library administrators, and I can select who has access to upload and who has access to download. And I can, because there can be sensitive data, that can be embargoed information in here that I don't want getting out into the broader universe. And so I can limit who has access. So those granular control permissions really allows me to have that visibility into and control over who can do what with what data, with what content. So it's a really effective way of managing control. And again, as I mentioned, it really is, as a marketer, what you really need is that control and visibility. So just to wrap up, a few things. Marketing is where art and science comes together. And so we really often focus on the art, the creative aspects, which is very visual, and people do tend to gravitate towards that. But I would say more important is the science of marketing, because marketing is very subjective. And so what we need to do is turn that subjectivity into objectivity, using data to make decisions. So starting with performance, not assumptions. And so what we see is really the challenge for CMOs is really focusing on that data, that subjectivity. And marketing has spent too many years running on opinions. Whose presentation looked better? Is it blue? Is it red? Is it purple? Focusing on that art. And while the art does matter, as I said, it's the science aspect, the data aspect that really is really what data is. Data has transformed from purely a creative outlet to a very data-driven focus. And there are really four questions that every CMO, every marketing leader should be answering with data. What's actually performing? What's being reused? What sales is reaching for? And what's sitting unused and burning the budget it took to create? These are questions that your executive team are going to ask of you. These are questions that your board is going to ask of you. And if you can't answer these questions, it means you just don't have the right data in your content. You really don't have that visibility over how content is being used. And I guarantee you're losing mind share, market share, and you're losing demand gen opportunities. So instead of guessing what works, I really double down on what's proven. I look at my DAM. It gives me complete insight to how it's being used, how content's being used, how content's not being used, who's using content. I have control over who can access what content. I can make sure that regional teams are using the right content and that everything stays on message and is consistent. So that kind of wraps up the presentation. I know we're a little bit over time. There is a question here, so we'll wrap it up. There's a question. How do you get creative and marketing teams to actually use the DAM consistently rather than falling back on Dropbox or Google Drive? And there's two pieces. One is when you're implementing your DAM, the human component matters. What we find effective is having a champion with each department. The DAM is not a marketing solution; it's an enterprise solution. So having a champion in each department that's going to use a DAM as part of the onboarding process makes a huge difference. But ultimately, it's all about ease of use. And that applies to any technology solution. If the technology is easy to use, it will be adopted. If you take the time to train and educate people, it will be adopted. And so effectively, the DAM will work if it has the ease of use. The DAM will be adopted if it integrates with other solutions. And so if you view your DAM as a standalone content storage repository, it'll have low adoption. But if you view your DAM as a system of action that integrates across the organization, that enables those everyday creators, it will have a high adoption rate. You'll have improved time to value, and you will have that control and visibility that as a CMO or a marketing leader, you absolutely need. And I think that's it for time. I'm just looking at any of the questions here. And it says, one more question. What do you see DAM implementation falling short over the ones that's successful? That's a cool question. I would say a couple of things. One, starting with technology, not the problem. And so you need to understand why you're buying a DAM. And what is the technology, what is the business use case problem or problems you're trying to solve, and then map the technology to address those problems. And IT really needs to be involved in that implementation. But like I said, you need different people in different departments helping because they become champions when you do roll it out. And then if you ever listen to John Horodisky from AVP, you'll know that the number one issue that slows down implementations is bad taxonomy, bad metadata. Metadata and taxonomy, the underpinning of your content strategy. And a chance to, when you do migrate from Google Drive or Dropbox to a DAM, it's like moving house. You get to do a bit of a purge and a cleanse and restructure your content thinking. And so I would say, make sure you understand the business use case and really focus early on your taxonomy and metadata to avoid challenging implementation that's going to take too long to either take too long to happen or it's just going to really not happen the way you expect it to happen. So that's what we've got time for questions. We're a few minutes over, but first off, I appreciate your time and attention. Hope you got some great tidbits out of this session. There's my email address. Feel free to reach out to me afterwards, connect on LinkedIn. Love to talk to you. Happy to answer any questions that you may have one-on-one. Always cool to talk about content and always great to talk about marketing in general. But appreciate time. Have an awesome rest of your day and we'll talk again. Thank you.